Hello and welcome to the fourth and final episode of our podcast, The Balance Sheet. Last but not least, I'm joined by Natalie Ribchester today. Natalie started her career in EY, trained in the Big Four, then sort of had some stints in the bright lights of London and Melbourne, and then sort of returned to the area working for Arqiva amongst a couple of other corporates, and now worked your way up to international markets, FC within Twinings the tea brand. So thank you for joining us, Natalie. First question we ask to all of our guests, and you're no exception, is what your favourite cake is, which is a bit of a venture theme, and why. Now, you've gone for red velvet cake, is that right?
I have, yeah.
And why that?
I chose it because if you're going to have cake, I think it should be something really sweet, and
Yep.
I like a red velvet. I think it's just really tasty.
Brilliant. Good a reason as any. So good. So yeah, what we'll do today, as per, is just run through your career, sort of any hints and tips along the way, with a sort of a few slightly more interesting questions about what makes things work for you. So I guess question we ask most people when we have this conversation, and good place to start, sort of what got you into accounting? And why did you get into accounting and finance?
So actually an unusual route probably compared to most. I did classical civilization at Warwick University. Warwick obviously having a big business school. I had lots of friends who did summer internships in the Big Four and went on to do graduate programs. And I graduated and decided to take a gap year, did a ski season, a bit of traveling, and it came about that there was a position at EY in Southampton in the September after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I phoned up some of my friends and sort of said, what is it that you do again? Do you like it? Do you think I'd be good at it? How does it work? And they kind of all unanimously said, yeah, actually, I think you'd quite like it. It's a good environment to be in. In the Big Four particularly, you have that kind of year group that you go in with. Mm-hmm. You're all learning together, that peer group. And that was where it started, really, with EY.
Fantastic, good. And do you feel like, because there's a common theme with a few of the people we've spoken to about training within practice and sort of having that grounding within practice, do you think your time with EY has sort of set you up to progress your career as you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a really practical perspective around the way that they really support you through your exams. As I said, I didn't do anything to do with accounting before starting. So my day one was going to college and learning what a debit and a credit was. And I had never even heard of these terms. So it was from that really practical building the base right from the bottom, all through your exams to your kind of final exams. And then from the experience actually being in a local office, getting to work with different size of businesses, different industries, really kind of seeing how does finance work in all these different places, depending if they're bigger, smaller, if they're kind of consumer products, which I really enjoyed. And that grounding. And then again, having that peer group, people to throughout your career kind of go back to and ask questions and bounce ideas off. So yeah, lots of reasons why I think that practice background really helps.
Fantastic. And on a slightly lighter note, obviously mentioned your sort of passion for consumer goods. It's obviously working for Twinings now.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've tried lots of different flavors of tea.
Yeah.
What's your go-to tea?
I guess at the moment, I generally a cup of English breakfast is kind of always in the morning. Can't get my day started without that. But in terms of more unusual teas, probably their super blends range at the moment, like something like a glow or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, just something different to have later in the day.
I must confess, I do like the glows myself. They're a nice blend. So good. Okay, cool. And again, a question that we're sort of asking most of the people we're speaking with. Obviously, you've had a lot of success throughout your career. What would you say, and might be hard to narrow it down to one or two maybe, but what would you say is your achievement throughout your career that you're most proud of, if you had to?
To narrow it down to a single achievement is probably quite hard, but I think early in my career, I started at Longtall Sally, and I took on the financial controller role there when my boss went on maternity. And at that stage, it was kind of my first job out of practice, and it was quite a big step up. Mm-hmm. So I think it was the biggest kind of unknown and challenge that I really, I think has set me in good stead for everything I've done since. And I learned a lot in that business, kind of going through them opening stores and going through vendor due diligence and a global consolidation and lots of different technical and softer skills that I think I probably still to this day look back very fondly on that experience, and the trust placed in me to kind of take that step is definitely something that motivates me, that having had that trust in me. So
yeah, definitely. And as accountants, obviously you guys tend to quite like dealing in facts and figures. So how did you find that experience in terms of being thrown into something that you hadn't done before and basically having to sort of learn on the job in a nutshell?
Yeah, I really like that. For me personally, I think I will kind of rise to the challenge, and I like being given opportunities where I don't know how to do something and have to figure it out along the way.
Yeah.
As opposed to kind of quite structured plans and projects and next steps. And I quite like, okay, do you think you could do this? You probably have the skill set. Let's see how it goes. So yeah, I personally, I really enjoy that.
Brilliant. And sort of on that, I guess something that we haven't discussed with other people that we've interviewed so far in the series has been, you've obviously had a period of doing contract roles as well, which again is sort of something a bit unique compared to the others we've spoken to. How did you find that side of things?
I think it was really driven by kind of life choices and choosing to move to Australia and then coming home and just taking opportunities that I needed to kind of fill time between choosing to travel or move. And actually, I think a contract gives you a really unique opportunity to approach work differently, because there's the job that needs to be done. And so you are more focused on that than kind of anything else. And so I think you can sometimes have more opportunities to see things differently. You're bringing outside experience in, you're looking at internal ways of doing things, and there's a real focus on the task at hand, I guess. And I've been lucky to be trusted with quite short contracts just on the back of that, in terms of being able to demonstrate achieving something within a short time frame and then being able to take that forward. So I think it gives you a different perspective and a different, I don't know what the word would be, but almost like authority to approach things a bit differently because you are external. It comes with challenges as well, because people think, oh, you won't be here, I don't need to necessarily change that. But it also gives you, that opportunity too.
Definitely. And it's interesting that you say that sort of having done some contract roles, when you then go back to a more stable permanent role, it sort of gives you almost that edge in terms of sort of used to dealing with challenging situations and things like that. So that's really interesting. You obviously mentioned about sort of personal situations and stuff like that. I've probably bored most people watching this already about the fact that we're about to have our first son, me and my wife. So I guess again on the lighter hearted side of things, I'm after one piece of advice as a parent. What would your one piece of advice as a parent be to someone like myself and lots out there, I'm sure, that are about to embark on the journey of being a parent?
Oh, I don't know. I guess expect the unexpected. You can't plan. It'll always be the day that you've got loads on, that they're up 5 times in the night, or the day that you think you've got everything planned and you've got them a meal that they love and it's their favourite and they won't eat any of it because they're teething. But then on the other side, they'll surprise you with learning a new word that is just really funny and you didn't know that they'd picked up from you. And they'll make you laugh because they notice something that you don't. Expect the unexpected.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. And then I guess obviously we've spoke about success, of which you've had lots, and but there's no such thing as, well, I'm yet to meet anyone that hasn't made a single mistake in their career. So if there's something that, looking back, you could sort of maybe change about how you've progressed your career, or anything you look back think you might have handled differently, is there anything that sort of stands out from that perspective? I think I took a choice to take, as I mentioned earlier, Long Tour Sally I have very fond memories of, really building my career and learning a lot. And for that, on a personal level, I really love fashion. So I took a choice to return to a fashion retailer, which just once I realised that I'd gone back into it, actually wasn't for me. So I think in FMCG,
often when I look at the work I do now or the work I did at Halfords, you're really working on the analytics of the product and saying, okay, well, actually this sells in our stores, but not online. What's going on? Is there a photograph missing? Is there a description that doesn't, like, what's the difference? And you can really unpick the story behind the numbers. But in fashion, you have a whole team of merchandisers who do that. The stock sits with them. And so I think maybe in my kind of rose-tinted glasses love of Long Tall Sally, forgot that fashion retail is a little bit different to the rest of FMCG.
Sure.
And maybe actually from a work perspective, it wasn't for me.
Okay, fine. And obviously, you've mentioned there, as a lot of our candidates do that sort of work with us, that the sector a prospective business in is obviously quite important to you. Is there any sector that you haven't tried so far? Obviously, as mentioned, you've worked for Arqiva within telecoms, lots of retail businesses, fashion retail you mentioned there. Is there any particular sector that you haven't tried so far that you think you'd really like to?
I think charity is probably something I'd be really interested in. I'd love to have more time, probably when my little one is not so little, to be able to volunteer more and use my skill set for a charity. But I haven't actually done any charity accounting. So I think a role in that area would help give me some of the skill set to then hopefully bring forward in the future.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think a lot of people that work in charities find it very sort of worthwhile, don't they? And I think we've seen that, interestingly, in the market, that lately there's been a lot more interest in sort of passion in terms of the company people work for and the employer and stuff like that. So no, that's great. Okay. And I guess then obviously this is about potentially giving career advice to people sort of embarking on a career in accounting and finance. What would that be, Natalie?
I think in terms of skill, it'd be really curiosity. So being kind of curious about the task, the way of doing it, the process, the report, whatever it might be, and going that little bit deeper to understand it. And probably then hand in hand with that in terms of advice, it's probably being open to finding out more and open to understanding that there's kind of finance, and then what sits next to it is your systems, because you don't really, in most businesses today, we don't do finance without a report coming out of a system. So being open to kind of leaning in more to that side, and then you don't do a report for nobody, you do it for somebody. So being able to lean into the relationship side and the curiosity about why do they want to know this piece of information, what's the problem they're trying to solve. So I guess that kind of being open to kind of blend those borders either way and think about what does the whole picture look like.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think that's quite sort of accurate to a trend in the market. So even probably when I started in recruitment 5 or 6 years ago, financial recruitment, it was more about sort of the numbers, but now it's a little bit more about the why behind the numbers and sort of adding commercial value. So I think that's great advice. And I think, definitely interrogating and being curious is important. We have obviously our last question that we ask to everyone about sort of leadership and how your leadership style works. But we have, funnily enough, with all of the I think all but one of the interviews we've done, there's been a bit of sort of we say finance is a small world, but there's been a bit of a family connection with, obviously your husband Sam's an accountant as well.
Yeah.
So, and he might well watch this. So I guess question for you, little bit of husband-wife rivalry. Who's the better accountant between Sam?
Probably depends what kind of accounting you want. Hard to answer. At the moment, I'm, as you say, working more in FMCG and on more commercial finance, and Sam's working more on a very technical role at the moment. So writing accounting papers, which I can't say I would be able to do right now. So it depends what kind of finance you want, probably.
Good. Very, very tactful answer. Very good. Okay, cool. And then, as I said, the question that we ask all of our interviewees, there's sort of a balance between sort of motivation and obviously sort of drilling down on hard work and all these sorts of things when you're a leader within any sphere, but particularly within finance. So I guess, how do you find the balance best when sort of leading and motivating people between encouragement and potentially sort of a bit of stick or whatever terminology you want to use? Yeah,
I think it's a really interesting question. I think it's very situational. So I kind of approach management a little bit like business partnering, and trying to, as that kind of critical friend of saying, you're there to ultimately help them develop in their career, engage them, whatever it might be, but also to help the contribution as a team. So I don't really see it as hierarchical as that, as like line manager, employee, in terms of we're both part of a team trying to achieve something, and how do we best do that, and what are the things that we maybe both need to do to move that forward. So I think it can be situational. If someone's new to the company, there's a lot of instruction because it's learning, okay, this is the business, this is how we do things, and then kind of leaving it open from there. Or if someone's asking for specific help or experience or your advice on something, then it might be leaning in more to that instructional side. But a lot of the time it's helping someone find their own way. And really being open to what that might look like for a different person in a different business at a different time. And it's never the same. Yeah.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Well, no, that's a great answer. And I think that sort of balance, hence the name of the podcast, is quite a common theme, sort of with all the people we've met. So yeah, look, Natalie, thank you so much for your time. That was episode 4 of the Balance Sheet. We're off to enjoy some coffee and some red velvet cake.